Hi, welcome to Fiberchats. My name is Irina. I'm the host here. My guest today comes from India, and I'll butcher the name. I know it for sure. So I'll try to pronounce it, and then I'll ask you to repeat it. So, Mugdha Manasa.
It's Mugdha Manasa.
Thank you. Well, welcome to my channel. Lovely to have you here. And we tried to plan it for quite a while, and I'm glad that you finally guest of my channel. Tell me a little bit about your journey, because you didn't start as a businesswoman and a store owner, connected with yarn. Like, tell me how it all started.
Okay, it actually started when after school, I took some knitting classes. My tuition teacher used to teach knitting. So I learned for the 1.5 month I had time before entering college. I learned knitting, did a bit of knitting, made the mandatory sweaters for my dad, for my brother, and forgot about it. I just didn't touch it again. And then once I got married, we shifted to a new city. I had no friends. At that time, I took a break from my job as well because we were trying to have children. And at that time, so I said, I want to do something new. I read extensively, but there are only so many books I can read in a day.
Right.
So I decided on a shopping trip, I found yarn. And it was a brightly colored yarn when we were in Gurgaon. And I spent whatever money was in my purse at the time. I sent it all on yarn, 3 sets of needles, and I just had enough money to take the share auto back to the hotel. That's about it. Literally, I had zero cash, probably a rupee or two more left in my wallet. And I got home and I put on YouTube and I restarted knitting. And this is sometime in 2012. And since then, I slowly started. There was test knitting that I took up because I have a thing with deadlines. If I don't have a deadline, I probably won't complete it. So test knitting was the way to get it done. Then I got introduced to foreign yarns with a group on Ravelry, which was called Will Work for Yarn.
Mm-hmm.
So a friend introduced me to it, an online Ravelry friend basically. She introduced me to it, and there I started working with foreign yarns. And I understood, because here in India we had only acrylic. It's a culture of acrylic because it's the most extensively available yarn and the most brightly colored and cheap. It's very easy to get. So I started using sock yarn to make shawls. I was making sweaters. And the yarn was beautiful. I loved the feel of it in my hands. It was giving me pleasure to actually start work. It wasn't the design. It was also now the yarn that was giving me pleasure.
Right.
And while this went on for some time, I started taking orders to make. But again, everything was in acrylic. Locally, everything was acrylic. So I started working. And then I discovered a local silk yarn store. And then I started taking orders for those yarns. So making shawls. Then after my daughter was born, I somehow got the idea to start designing for myself. And I got the opportunity to design a pattern with I like knitting. And it was a specific theme. They had the design concept which I had 3 shades of blue and tassels at the end. And it was a very pretty design. I wanted to do it. And I thought they would be giving pattern support. And unfortunately, that was not there. So now I had to locally source cotton. So I found a store that sold me cotton, but only undyed, because they had no bandwidth to dye it for me. To go to a shop that would dye clothes, they were charging me 3 times the amount, the cost of the yarn for each color. And it was just not viable for me at the time. To be able to spend that kind of money out of my pocket was just not viable. So I found a chemical shop which sold me dyes. So that suddenly it kind of became a roller coaster, and I just ended up doing the pattern, doing the entire design, dyeing the yarn, and then knitting with it and submitting that as my final piece. So that was my first.
I love that story because it's like, this is how like the most ingenious things are invented, like out of necessity, right? Like you suddenly start exploring your options.
I literally went to shops to say, can you dye this for me? And they were like, it's going to charge you XYZ amount. I'm like, my yarn doesn't cost that much. It's like literally 1/3 the price of the yarn. I'm sorry, that's the charge we'll charge you. I was like, well, that's not viable for me. So I went to another, then I just kept walking to find somebody. I found a shop that sold dyes. It's literally a small chemical shop. So I had my toddler, she was about a year old, and my father-in-law was with me. I said, can you hold on to her? I'll just go into the shop. I don't want to take away the chemicals. So can you just hold on to her onto the road? And I go inside. I'm like, he tells me the price of the dye. I'm like, come back. Do you think I should do this? And like, do. This works are cheap. Yeah. Like, yeah, do. My father was like, I'll take care of you. So he was like a huge support during that time.
Right.
He was living with us for some time, and he was like, hey, you do. I'll take care of the child. You do. He bought all the dyes, came home in the night. He's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm boiling all the water and all that. Our experiment happened. And he was there with me through that journey of actually getting that pattern out and sending it out. But still, there was no concept of store yet. Then about the time it was about to actually be published, it was almost time. My friends and I were sitting and playing around with various websites, saying that if we order XYZ amount and split it between us, probably we can reduce on cost. If we buy from wholesalers, we have this grand idea. We don't buy small amounts. We don't buy one skein, two skein. So let's buy big amounts.
Right.
And we cut down on costs. We'll get good amount of yarn. Like, okay, yeah, let's do. And I found the seller in the eastern part of India. I said, hey, this guy sells silk yarn. Let's see if we can get. And I told him to send me samples. And he sent me undyed samples, thinking I was a yarn store. I was like, dude, I'm not a yarn store. I just wanted to see your silks. But then what do I do with the undyed yarn? Now suddenly my hand got itchy. So I dyed all of those colors, those mini skeins. And I'm like happy. I'm like, okay, what is the price? When he told me the price, I showed those, those mini skeins to everyone I knew. And like, how are these? Like, oh, these are gorgeous colors. I'd love to have this. Like, okay. I raised a pitch to my husband saying, dude, I need finance. He said, okay, after this finance, I'll give you only 50% of it. Make it work. So my initial budget was, he gave me literally 40% of the budget, which I had placed. And he said, make it work. So I literally made it work. 6 months later, I was plowing back all my, returns into the business. And it's now to the stage where it goes. Everything is fully funded by the business itself.
That's beautiful. That's a great story. Well, let's talk about crafts in India in general, because you mentioned bright colors. And like, to me, it's, notorious for all the bright, beautiful saris and silks, right?
Yeah.
Although, like, this is how I come to think of India, like the colors of all those flowers, the colors of all those tropical fruits and the food and silk. When it comes to your local customers, when you dye those colors, do you dye it for like your friends? Do you dye it for, who do you have in mind when you dye the colors?
Initially, yes, it was an important aspect for me to dye it for clients because I needed to sell. So, but then I realized that my vision towards a color was very similar to what the people around me liked. So I let go in terms of color. So I said, okay, whatever strikes me the best, sometimes I'm not happy with it. But actually it turns out, but there are people who are like, wow, you've done something great. And it gets sold. Like, for example, I have a skein here of, this was in silk. Now, this is a kind of colorway, which it was literally a whim. I had no name for this. I literally got out of my WhatsApp group and said, guys, I dyed this. I like the color. But can you give me a name? Because I don't know what to call it. So, but then something like bright like this, I think I have this one skein left. So out of the entire batch, there's only one skein left because everyone loved it. Yeah. So it's not like I necessarily have an idea. I have a plan. I go with colors as long as it's bright, it gets sold.
Well, like when you started, right, you were just doing like a few experimental colors. How many colors have you done by now?
I have no. There are times when I've done something completely new because it was just, I literally realized that it was, as long as I had color and I, mixed the colors beautifully and it was visually appealing, it would be sold. So my specialty lay in having variegated, or semi-solid, not in solids. I could do solids, but I realized I don't really want to do solids. It's too boring to me. So I went with variegateds and getting new colors, mixing colors, understanding how every color join in. We're doing space dyeing. Like this one was slightly space dyed. Only one sections of it were dyed up. And basically play with the colors and enjoy myself And that is how even my love for the colors were coming through.
How
So
did you learn how to dye? Because, like, okay, you bought the chemicals, but like from that to actually achieve something beautiful like that, what was
internet.
that
I
process?
literally opened internet, looked up textile forums. I looked up. There are many dyeing references even on Ravelry. I went into forums, said, "What is the percentage? What do I understand? I don't understand chemistry. Can you please explain to me this?" And there were so many helpful people out there. And there was somebody who took me step by step, saying, if you add this to this amount of dye to this amount of chemical, this is the variation. But if you add a little more, you're probably going to get burnt yarn because the dye burns. So
Right.
the dye gets burnt. So you actually have a different effect entirely. So if you want to go higher or lower, this is where you play. So it literally had people, point that out to me. So you can do this. Go ahead, experiment. You will learn best through experiment. This is how you enjoy it. And people literally handheld me.
Are you surprised by the success of the business?
Yes, I'm surprised and thankful. Today we met a lot of other people who came in, new people, and they were like, we came in through Sunrays, and I was delayed in reaching the venue because my child was not well, and I had to take her along. Others she would have taken me off. She's like, no, you having a meet, I am coming. End of story. And she was not well, and I had to take her along, and so I got delayed in reaching. And everyone was like, okay, Sundays. And it was like, nobody even knows Bangalore Brigade anymore. It's only Sundays all the way. Like, yeah, I'm happy.
Well, let's talk about Sunrays. How did you come up with the name Sunrays Creations?
It's actually my husband's name. It's Ravikant, which means sunlight, but it's modified to sun rays. And his name has been lucky for everyone who has used it. So that was the modification that we used. And I used it for the company and it worked. It's literally his name.
When people think of India, like we imagine really hot tropical weather. And I know that there is parts in northern India that like get chilly in the evenings and sometimes, but like in general, right, it's like really hot country. How does that affect the yarn that you dye? Like, do you go with specific fibers in mind?
Basically, the favorite yarn is cotton, but I do not prefer to dye cotton because I find it very bland as a fiber. It's available in lower prices. It's like acrylic here. It's available. I'm just clogging my cupboard if I try to dye because hand dyeing costs money.
Right.
My yarn will be at a premium if I'm hand dyeing it. Nobody will buy it when you get it for cheaper. To be absolutely fair, so I took it off my board. So, but otherwise, South India believes in silk. You have a silk growing manufacturing unit right here in near Bangalore. It's called Mysore. And on the way to Mysore, there's a place called Ramnagara, which you literally have cocoons. You can go to a wholesale market and buy cocoons.
Right.
And you have the mills and everything over here. So this is a base. We live in silks. When we have a function, where like a bride would change 4 heavy, each sari would weigh about what, 8 kgs? And it's literally weighed. If your value of your sari is by the weight of it.
Right.
So they're selling by, so you change 3-4 saris which are like heavy and you survive simply because it is a thermal fiber. Silk is thermal, as in when it's hot, you actually stay cool, and if it's winter, you stay warm.
Oh, that's so interesting. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, silk is a thermal fiber,
Yeah.
which is why it is so extensively used. I mean, you sweat, you might have stains. If it's pure silk, you might have stains, but it's very easy to get it dry cleaned. Many times I don't even dry clean. I wash it, use a bit of shampoo and wash it off, and it's fine. Silk is very forgiving as a fiber.
Well, I mean, you do like you are like a woman of all trades because not only you dye the yarn, right? You write the patterns. Tell me like about the patterns. What's your philosophy about writing the patterns? Who do you write the patterns for? Like, who do you have?
I write patterns for beginners because I found a lot of advanced patterns which are absolutely gorgeous, but my aim to be, whether it was knit or it was crochet patterns, it had to be beginners. It had to be easy for everybody to be able to knit or crochet it. I do not see the point in making it too complicated. My brain doesn't work that way. I cannot make it complicated. I just need it simple, pretty, but it should look difficult. I mean, when somebody says, "Oh wow, you've made something intricate," but then the background of it is like, the maker should feel that happiness. I got away easy, right? I made it easy, but I'm getting so many compliments for it.
Why, you have beautiful patterns. I looked on Ravelry and they're like all really pretty. But when you like think about your fiber arts community in India, are a lot of people knitting or crocheting? Is it popular?
Very. Crochet more than knitting. Knitting is more popular in northern India, where you have a lot of sweater weather. The winters get really cold because of the Himalayas. Get a lot of cold weather coming in. So the entire northern belt of India sees a lot of cold weather. So knitting is very popular up north. And pure wool, good Indian sheep wool, sturdy, acrylic, but also sheep wool is very popular up north. Towards the southern side of India, it's crochet, cotton crochet, doilies, fanciness, everything, even crochet shawls. But shawls is not really a very popular item here. People are slowly understanding it, but it's not a very popular item. Mostly it's still doilies, but there's a shift. It's more like the urban customer, more urban category would look at, various items like shawls and cardigans and sweaters and stuff like that. But otherwise, it is geared toward children, especially in
Well,
South India.
well, when you mentioned that like your colors are influenced by your surroundings, basically, like you're getting
Yeah.
inspiration from your surroundings. Are the designs also inspired by your surroundings, or do you find inspirations on Ravelry from like other places in the world?
Actually, it's not really an inspiration from the environment around me. That like during my Indesco journey, we had a theme. There was something called monsoon. Now, when it said monsoon, I had a small child at home. At the time, she was about 4 years old. At the time when I made the Godgulu vest, because then the moment the theme came up, I was like, I want to make something for her. I don't want to make a shawl. I don't want to make something. I want to make a garment for my child. So that came up. I made it was a Intarsia project which I made for her. So the pattern had umbrellas and the rain clouds and the rain falling. It was something that would attract a small child. So that was my vision. I wanted something for her which I knew she would be happy to wear. So that was my vision for that. Otherwise, it was when it came to the Taj Mahal theme, it became the angular aspect of the entire Taj Mahal construction. So it is a concept. Sometimes it's just a stitch pattern which I want to make something different. I see something, I just want to make it. So I think of something what to do with it.
Do you consider Intarsia to be beginner-friendly project?
Oh, I wrote it. Actually, I insisted on beginners who are not familiar with color work to be part of my testers, just to see if it was going to be easy. And it was easy for them. And they went on to, they in fact modified it. One lady who had a small baby at that time, halfway through the test, and she had to leave the test. And she's like, I'm so sorry, I could not. But 6 months later, she came back to me and said, I completed the vest and I loved it so much. I made a hat of the matching design.
I love that because a lot of people hear the word Intarsia and they run away screaming. Like they're so terrified of the concept of it, right? And for you to treat it as a beginner-friendly pattern, like I find it very refreshing.
It was very fun. It was small. It was very easy. The entire umbrella was done one color. So you had three different bobbins going in the back. That entire color gets done. So they were not changing colors through the umbrellas. That what made it difficult for them.
Right.
So each umbrella was a different color. So that made it fun for everybody. They could do what they wanted with the colors. I just said keep the clouds grey. That's all. Because it would be weird if I had pink clouds.
What's your favorite part about running a business?
The joy of selling, actually. The actual sell when and I see that particular yarn, especially it's with the yarns, that somebody sees the potential of the yarn as I see it. Basically, when I dye, it's not just the colors, but also the potential of those colors in that yarn. So, when I have something like that, when I see the potential, I see that this kind of colorway would be great on maybe a shawl, but it would be better in matched up in a colorway project, or with stripes or something. Basically, you have an idea. When you see a yarn, you see the potential of it, and when somebody buys the yarn, you get happy that others are also seeing that potential. You see some part of your vision for it. So that is what actually is it.
How does it feel when you see somebody else make your pattern with your yarn?
It's thrilling. It's absolutely thrilling. It's
Are you
absolutely
are
joy.
you like ever surprised what people make with your yarn?
Oh, I wouldn't say surprised, but it's more of sad. I've rarely been surprised because mostly when you buy silk, which is not exactly a cheap fiber, when you buy it, you're going to be very careful with it. You're going to buy something like, you're going to make either very few people make cardigans. So it's going to be mostly like shawls. Couple of surprises were a cabled, a cowl in linen. I personally did not think linen was a fiber meant for cables. I thought it was very flat yarn. And Jayalakshmi MH had made a pattern, Apurva Designs on Ravelry. She had made a cowl which had cables on it. And I was like, tell me, Jaya, is it going to sit? And she came to, when I was in Hyderabad, she came over home, she brought the sample and said, see, it holds. Trust your yarn, it holds. And I was like, for me, it was like a matter of absolute joy because somebody else was telling me about the yarn. Somebody else was standing up for my yarn.
Right.
That was happy. That was a very
I
happy
mean,
moment.
do you feel like you're still learning about different qualities of different bases that you use?
Yeah, every time there's something made, I understand something new. Every time I knit with it or I crochet with it, I learn something new about the way it's going to lie flat, how it's going to actually work up in different weights. So I was doing a test knit for one of the designers on Instagram. It was for a tank top, and she was a very loose gauge, and she said DK weight, and I'm going to use a 5.5 mm. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go with Urna DK, which is my merino DK weight yarn. And I said, okay, let me go with it. I don't think it's going to work. It's going to look very thin. 5.5 with DK is like loose.
Right.
It's like, go with it. Let's see. And actually surprised me. I was very thrilled with it because it gave me such a drapey flow. I was so thrilled with the gauge swatch that I got. I'm like, okay, I'm going to dye a color specifically for this and I'm going to make it. I was like so thrilled with it because I did not realize that using a fatter needle will not it will not make it wholly for the merino yarn specifically. It will actually give it drape.
Right.
That was for me a surprise. I learned something new there just the other day.
I mean, I hear so many things that you do. Describe me your day, like how you wake up in the morning and how is it happening, all of it?
Okay, I don't necessarily follow a schedule. I mean, I have follow a schedule for my child, for my husband, that needs to be done because now school has started here. So I wake up very early in the morning, have my coffee, relax. First morning has to be, check my emails, be done with the, nitty gritty parts of it. Earlier, I used to die at that hour, 3, 4 in the morning, get up and start dying. But lately, my health has also taken a backseat. So I go easy on that part of during the day. I just take it easy, have a nice bath, and then start cooking. Make the various lunch boxes, get everything ready. Wake up and child. So like wake up for like half an hour before she actually reaches the bathroom. So that process entirely goes. Once she's done, then the husband, everything gets done. Once everyone's off, then the house is empty for me. That is when I die. Either I die or I catch up on the website work and sometimes packing work. So then it shifts. Once my child comes home, then again I have to put the business aside. Then I have to be focused again on her. So I have those few hours in the morning, which is when I focus my energies on the business. So it's not much in the day. So sometimes I have a competition with her when I'm knitting or crocheting. She's like, okay, I'll finish this much of writing, especially when she's writing. I have to tempt her, like, let's have a race. I'll finish this row, or you'll finish this much writing. So either we have a race. And we're like, okay, as long as my work is getting done, your work is getting done. I'm good with it.
Right.
So let's have a race. So that's how we work.
Well, when do you have time to knit, to test knit, to do all this?
I do test knit. I don't take many test knits now, but very rarely. But yeah, I take them up. But then yeah, those are where there's enough of deadline, and I'm sure I'll be able to complete it. That's when I take it up.
I mean, you sound like extremely efficient woman.
I'm not. I'm all over the place. I'm literally all over the place. And I have people coming over, and I run the business through my house. So I have a lot of people who come over sometimes. to see the yarns locally. Couple of friends like, okay, can we come over? And they come and they have a look at it. So then that day goes off because then I'm spending my time focused on letting people know, telling them about the yarns. We discuss about yarns, then spend some time. So sometimes those days go by where I'm not doing anything. I'm not knitting. I'm not crocheting. I'm not design. Of course, design has taken a backseat after my health went down, especially after COVID. I got hit a couple of times. The second time was pretty bad, and after that, I didn't have the mental space to take out to design again. So that kind of fell back. But otherwise, it's okay. I just test knit. I knit. I make something now. My daughter's after me, like, make me a unicorn pullover. I was like, okay, wait, I'll make it. I'm like, she's like, okay, where's my pullover? I'm like, wait, I just wound the yarn. I'll do it. Wait.
I mean, is all of that stressing you out? Like the fact that you're running a business and you have all the household things and the designing ideas and your test knitting, does that put a lot of pressure on you?
It has taken me conscious effort to slow down and forgive myself for not being able to do everything. It took effort. I used to get stressed out and used to be like, get completely worried about not being able to do everything. And I used to get like, oh, there's so many testing calls, there's so many designer calls, and I'm not doing anything. And it used to become a vicious cycle of being unhappy. And when you're unhappy, you tend to show it out. And I had a child in the house, and I can't always show it out. And it's not healthy for me to be unhealthy mentally. So I put designing back to the back. I told myself it's okay. Don't design. If you have a design in your mind, draw it out, put it away. If you're not able to do it. So sometimes I draw it out, I just keep it away. I've learned not to look at it for now until I'm ready completely to be able to start designing. Recently, I took on some test nets, so some I'm able to do it. Like there was a yarn for there's a new yarn I launched, Mohana. So that got tempted. I really got tempted. I was like, I have to make a sample for this, and I made that snow cloud sweater by Melanie Berg. I tested it for her, and I was happy with it. I was like, okay, now I'm confident I can make a pullover of my size in a test knit call. So I'm again started test knitting.
Well, I mean, tell me a little bit why you would test knit for somebody else. Like, what do you?
It takes the pressure off me. It takes the pressure off me to design. I still have that deadline because I still can't end without a deadline. It'll go to my WIP file. I will not be able to complete it. So the deadline is there. So that will ensure it's getting done. But I don't get the pressure of designing, the math, of the calculation. I'm not able to do it right now. So I put my energy into dyeing and look at the dyes and say, okay, let me test knit with this. So I'd make something else.
When you test knit for somebody else, like as a designer, is that like, do you think, is there like a critical thinking that like, oh, I would have done it differently, I would have written it differently?
I don't get into that mode. I take on designs, I request for designs, which I know are out of my category. I mean, I do not think that way. There are people who think cables, who think extensive lace. I don't think that way. My mind doesn't go there. So for me, it's a pleasure to enjoy what somebody has designed. So like, for example, the snow cloud has this beautiful dolman. I never even made a dolman sweater for myself. I don't even know how it would look. I was not even sure if it would ever suit me. But I loved the way Melanie had, given those ripping, the twisted rib, and the way it fell over the arms, and it gave a beautiful V, the way it made, the way that it was designed. And I fell in love with that. I fell in love with the arm, literally, which is why I wanted to do it. So when I made it, it was like, I got satisfaction because I know I wouldn't think of that design. So I'm fine. I just saw it. Only there are small errors sometimes, because normally the designers send it to the TE and then they give it for testing. So usually errors are taken care of. So it's just minor things that need to be looked at. That's all. It just becomes a pleasure.
What does knitting mean to you, like in your life?
It's a lifesaver. For me, it's a lifesaver, literally. The most depressed times in my life, I did not even realize that I had turned to knitting to pull me through it. And it did pull me through it. That literally one stitch at a time, to be able to keep on knitting. It actually helped me work through a lot of my problems. And I got out of a very dark phase in my life with the help of knitting. So it's a lifesaver, literally.
I mean, when you were working in the corporate world, could you imagine yourself running your own business and being responsible for all of that?
No, never. I was into human resources, specifically into IT recruitments. So it says human resources, but it's more of a sales job because I'm selling the company literally, like you've got to take this job. I'm selling that concept. I'm selling the job description to the person who's taking the job. So it's a part sales job. And there's pressure. You've got to fill in those numbers in the company with those many number of people. So it's like the kind of pressure there is, it's on par with sales. And I've done sales before, so I know it's probably not FMCG sales, which is crazy, but other sales jobs. With this, it's literally the same. And that kind of stress levels, and I did well. The point was I did very well in that. And I never thought I would move away from that mode to come here and say I will make my own business, and that will an entirely different line which does not exist in India. At that time when I started yarn dyeing, and there was literally no other yarn dyer in India. The couple of ones who started dyeing recently are all people who are my clients.
Oh, that's so fun.
And they saw me dyeing, a couple of them came home and they have started.
Well, do you think it's like your role to educate your potential customers about like why the yarn costs more, the process of dyeing, how much time it takes, all these things? Like
very rarely. Very rarely. I have understood that like, there are some people, but then I've also understood these are not my clients. The moment they start questioning me, I will explain. I take the time, I explain it to everybody. But those are not my customers, and they never come back, even if they buy that one scheme. That it's for them that one luxury scheme. For them, it's that, and they won't come back and buy the second.
Right.
The ones who come back are ones who understand and appreciate the kind of level. And mostly, as I said initially, it is the urban customer, the urban knitter who will buy my yarns. They understand the quality, they have had access or seen others use abroad. They've seen the kind of quality, the kind of colors, the cost of hand dyed yarn abroad.
Right.
They understand that difference. They understand the difference why my skin would cost at least 10 times more than what they can buy in acrylic. They understand that difference, and that is why they do not question me.
Well, you live in the country with 1.4 billion people population. Like it's basically unlimited potential right there, right? Without leaving the borders. What's your vision for your company? Where do you see it going?
My company, the way I wouldn't say it is a vision for it, because I do not have anything to start with, to be honest. And I do not know how I was going to grow. I was not even sure, because nobody in my house runs a business. I'm literally the first person who's ever run a business in my family. So I had no background, nothing. So I do not have a very long-term vision except to make it viable. That said, I wanted a yarn company of Indian natural yarns, high quality, affordable. To the extent, I mean, I will not say it's going to be as affordable as acrylic. It's silk after all.
Right.
But even in category of silk, it should be somewhat affordable. That's where I started off from. Something beautiful and purchasable. It should be approachable. And it was for Indians. I mean, for a very long time, I did not even open my website or Etsy for a very long time, because I do not see the outside world as being a potential customer. Then I had a swap partner. There was this swap that used to happen on Facebook. I forget the name, but they used to have this swap, and I met one of my swap partners was a small dyer in the US, Blue Heron Farms, and she was a Vermont-based farmer, and she was bringing up her two daughters, and she encouraged me like, we actually got her to a call one night, and she's like, okay, open Etsy. this is how you make your this one. It's like, okay, you're charging me extra. There's something wrong that you've done there. And she literally made me sit down and open my Etsy shop. Like, no, you should be able to sell. You've got beautiful yarns. Sell it abroad. And that's when I opened it.
So what's the furthest you send your yarn to?
New Zealand, Australia. That's the furthest. I've sold it. I mean, somebody pinged me and said, okay, I want to buy your yarn for a project I have in mind, and your yarn seems good. Can you send it to me? Can you ship it to me? And that order to New Zealand got delayed because the corona restrictions came up for New Zealand.
Right.
So I actually got delayed by about 3 months before I was able to ship it. But she was also very patient. She's like, okay, take your time. Let it come to me. And like that, like these swaps and all, I meet people. My partners I've been blessed with good partners, even in my swaps. So it's been a pleasure to make for them, send it to them. Eventually they have come back, we're like, oh, this is silk. Wow, I want to buy more. And they've actually bought after that. So it was a good experience. It's been a good experience. I've been blessed with a lot of people in my life. And that is, I think, the luckiest part, the best part of my entire business. I've met so many people and so many wonderful people who have supported me through the entire journey. And
so when your father-in-law encouraged you to buy that first can of dye, has he ever changed his mind? Has he ever like questioned your sanity of going into business like this?
No, actually, he was my biggest champion. He was my biggest champion of everyone in my family. Like, yeah, do it. You can do it. It's okay. At the most, it'll fail.
Is there such a thing as your personal stash? Do you have personal yarn stash?
Oh, yeah. I have a lot of stash. And it is literally double the amount of what my yarn store holds.
Really? I love that. You're my kind of person, you know. I always say that like yarn collecting, pattern collecting, and knitting are like 3 different hobbies and have nothing to do with each other.
Exactly. I'm like trying to make an effort to use my stash. So like I pulled out some shawls and I said pulled out some yarns and I said I'll make some stuff. And every time I'm like, I'm not inspired by this yarn. My friend asked me like, why the hell did you buy it then? Like, well, at that time it was inspiring because of the price. Now what to make with it? Like, you're mad. And then I get gifts, the various swaps. As I said, swaps. So I get gifts. So they're quite a big bundle of yarn that I sit on.
No, I find that like I don't think there is any yarn that I've met that I haven't liked and some of it loved. And I believe, like, I'm a firm believer that there is time and place for every kind of yarn. It just like might have to sit there for a few years or decades, but eventually it'll
find a pattern. It will find a pattern. So I'm not inspired with it at that moment. But then when I started working on it, there was this Shetland yarn, which I got from Color Mart, and it was over twisted. But it looked gorgeous, so I picked it up. But when I got it on hand, because now this Color Mart is in the UK, so obviously I haven't traveled there, so it's come to me. So when I saw it, it felt very rough. But the moment I pulled it out, everyone around me was like, "Oh, what a beautiful yarn! What are you making with it?" I'm like, "Okay, I got compliments, so I will make it." So you never know what works out. And the shawl, of course, was working on very beautifully in that. One of the rare patterns which I do without a deadline. But yeah, let's see.
Well, I love seeing your yarns because they look absolutely beautiful. And I hope one day to order from you actually and get it here in the US. And try to knit something with it and perhaps some new pattern of yours and try to do that.
I hope I do get back to pattern designing at some stage. But as I said, I'm taking it easy for now. I'm still settling down.
I'm sure like it's all ahead of you yet. Like I see, like you're a powerhouse. I see a lot of things happening in your life in the near future. Like let the children grow a little bit and then you're going to be unstoppable.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thanks so much for being my guest today. I really enjoyed talking to you. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. An absolute pleasure.
Thank you.